Hello fellow Clashers, I am Kairos Time and it is time to clash. Today we're going to be taking a look at the tournament tier list powered by StatsRoyale. Over 500,000 matches, actually exactly 500,000 matches, were taken into consideration when it came to making this tier list over a period of 5 days. This is for September and October 2017. Hope you enjoy. Thank you so much for jumping on today's video, guys. Today we're going to be taking a look at those use rates and win rates, but they are not going to be included in this video. They will be in the comment section or the description of this video. There's going to be a link to a Reddit post that will have all of the information there. But I did consider the use rates and the win rates provided by StatsRoyale.com very heavily when it came to determining these cards and putting them into the correct tier list. Typically for the tournament tier list, I also include a balance list, but I'm actually going to be including that in a future video because I feel like that's I have some good thoughts to talk about when it comes to the meta. And I'm just going to leave it at that. We'll talk about that in a future video. So make sure you stay tuned, hit the subscribe button and the bell notification button so that you are the first one to be able to watch it. Let's go ahead and start out with the F tier. This is, once again, for competitive tournaments. This is not for the ladder, so these are the cards that have been previously in the F tier. The F tier is for poor cards that simply don't work very well in competitive gameplay. Now, there are some times where a player will be able to pull off a really cool deck, or even pros may be able to take, like, for example, the Sparky and be able to put it in a deck and make it work, but it doesn't work consistently for majority of players, and there's a reason why most people don't play with these cards when they're trying to be competitive in the ladder. In tournaments, not the ladder. That's a different story. New to the F tier, we do have the heal going down from the C tier. Now the heal, since it's nerf, just really struggled, and it had absolutely atrocious use rates and win rates, and simply does not fit into any tier other than poor right now. Even when it comes to Three Musketeer decks, it just seems to really struggle. Also, the cannon cart, I did not have this ranked in the last tier list, and so we're going to include the cannon cart in this tier list. I am going to start it out right here in the F tier. I just don't think that it's a very good card in any meta, really, and I think that it could use some type of a buff. It just seems to really struggle, and there are some pros that I've seen, like in CCGS. Jay Monty pulled out the cannon card a few times and was able to make it work out, but it definitely struggles for most situations, and you kind of have to have a good idea what your opponent is going to be playing to really count on being able to make that cannon card work pretty well. So now, something new we're going to be talking about is F tier stats in this video. So we're going to talk about usage rates. The lowest usage rate was the bomb tower at 0.2%, and the highest was the elite barbarians at 6.2%. Still, I don't think the elite barbarians are very good in tournament gameplay, but some people have made it work out. Then right in the average, we take all the cards and average them out, that is 1.8%, and that's right around where Freeze was at. Then when it comes to the win rates for the F tier, we're looking at a win rate for the Tesla being the lowest out of the entire meta of all of the cards in Clash Royale, 37.1%, and the highest in the F tier was the cannon cart at 47.5%, still lower than 50%, really not that great of a card. And then right in the middle was about 41.2%, and that's about where the mirror was at. So hopefully that gives you kind of an idea of where the F tier cards are at. All of the other F tier cards lie somewhere between that lowest and highest range there. If you do want specifics, you can look in the Reddit post I'm going to include in here. Here we're on to the C tier list. These are cards that are fair for the tournament meta. They work, and you can make them work in specific decks. But although then there may be some cards that fit a little bit better, or these may be cards that you're wanting to fit a very specific role. Let's go ahead and talk about these new cards. First of all, we do have the Graveyard. Now I'm moving the Graveyard from the A all the way down to C because it just did not have very good usage rates or win rates. Really seems to struggle. The nerf that it received basically took it out of the meta. It really did, and it seems to be really struggling, and you really do have to build a deck around making it work and be able to counter a lot of popular cards right now, and that's just it's difficult to make it work right now. Then we also have the Bowler. The fact that there are P.E.K.K.A.s and Mega Knights everywhere in competitive gameplay just means the Bowler just really gets taken out, and doesn't seem to provide very much value at all. We also have Skeleton Army. Zap is at an all-time high. I think it's all-time. One of the highest usage rates I've ever seen for Zap, and because of that, Skeleton Army really does seem to struggle. We also have the Dark Goblin as well. The Dark Goblin just gets outshined by a lot of different cards. I think it's great in draft, in the draft mode, but other than that, the Dark Goblin just seems to really struggle and get outshined, even when there's a lack of log in the meta. It's very interesting to see the Dark Goblin struggling so much. Then we also do have the Flying Machine, not ranked in the previous tier lists because it's just brand new. I don't actually have any usage rates or stats for the Flying Machine because of how brand new it is, but I think that it's safe to say that the Flying Machine just does. I think that it could fit into some decks, but I don't think that it's good enough to really be anywhere other than the C tier. But I don't think it's bad enough to be in the F tier. It may be well with a little bit of a buff, but we'll see. We'll see. I'm not convinced it is completely dead yet, but we'll see. Then we also do have the Archers. The Archers had a big decrease in usage rates and win rates as well. The fact that they're just easily cleared and they don't offer a lot of offense or defensive ability. They don't damage Hog Riders enough. They don't really do anything against against miners, and so the Archers seem to kind of struggle. Puts them down into the B tier. Let's take a look at the C tier stats that we have here. Usage rate. The lowest usage rate card was the Guards. Obviously, the Guards had a higher use or a lower usage rate than even a lot of the F tier cards, but I think that the Guards do fit into a very specific niche where they can help out in this this meta, which is why they're in the C tier. And then the highest usage rate was the Skeleton Army at 15.9%, and right in the middle, or the average of it all, was 5.2%, which is about where the Valkyrie was at. We also do have win rates. We have the lowest was the Witch, had the lowest win rate of all the C tier cards at a 39.3%, and the highest was the Furnace at a 48.2%. And right in the middle was about 43.2%, and that's about where the Archers were at. Let's take a look at the B tier. These are cards that are good. They aren't meta defining, they're not amazing, but you can use them, and they can be good in certain circumstances. There may be cards that are better than they are, but they are cards to consider when it comes to building a deck, especially if they have a specific role that you need to fit into there. Here are the previously B tier cards, and now we have some new ones like the Ice Wizard. Now the Ice Wizard got a buff, and we saw an immediate increase usage rate in him when he did get that buff. But what we're finding here is that he typically needs some type of a bet. There are better options to deal with bats, and also, even though he does have an increased damage per hit, so he can take care of skeletons and things like that, skeletons are never used. Skeleton Army, you don't really find yourself in a situation where you need to clean up a Skeleton Army afterwards. Usually you are taking care of it on when you're going on the offense with a zap or something like that. But then Graveyard as well. Graveyard just has a really low usage rate, and so the Ice Wizard just doesn't fit into the A tier anymore. I think he can be good in certain decks, but he's definitely a B tier card. We also do have the Executioner. Now the Executioner has kind of been falling off a little bit as well, especially as there has been a decrease in cards like the Minion Horde, and the Executioner, he just kind of gets outshined. There's not really a lot of reason to use the Executioner in this meta because there aren't a lot of splash type cards, because the Mega Knight influences that, and so the Executioner just seems to, they're just better options than the Executioner, namely the Electro Wizard. We also do have the Balloon. Now I'm bringing the Balloon up from the C tier to the B tier. I was having actually conversation with some of the pros at the CCGS when I was a guest speaker there, and the Balloon is one of those cards. It actually has one of the highest ban rates out in the CCGS, and the reason why is because the Balloon is kind of like a wild ball. Like you can throw it out in there, or curveball. You can throw it out in there, and it can really put some of these competitive meta decks into a tough situation if you're able to play that Balloon correctly. I don't think that it's meta defining. I don't think it's A tier quality. Hashtag Spagelatons. But I do think that it's a good fit for this current meta. We also do have the Baby Dragon. The Baby Dragon had a really good moment in there when Bridge Spam was popular because it did a good job of clearing like defensive skeletons and helping out against the Goblin gangs and things like that. But we've seen a decreased usage in the Baby Dragon as those types of defensive swarm troops have decreased. And So I think it's a good option. I don't think it's the best, but I think it's a good option. We also do have Tornado. Now, interestingly enough, we've seen an increased usage of Hog Riders and Miners, and the Tornado is getting a decrease in this. What? Wait, what? What's going on, Kairos? Well, the reason why is the Tornado, typically pro players don't play the Miner in the position where the Tornado, they'll play the Miner in the position where the Tornado can't pull it onto the tower, and similar situation with the Hog Rider. There's just better options to deal with it. You want to try and avoid as much damage on your tower as possible, and the Tornado just doesn't seem to consistently take care of things like that. There are better options, like I said, and so it's moving down as well as the Executioner. Interesting to see that even that combination just really seems to struggle. Both usage and win rates of both of those cards decrease. We also have the Tombstone. The Tombstone, I think that it was just too high. It's a decent card to use. It does help defend against like P.E.K.K.A.s and even the Mega Knight and Hog Riders, but your opponent almost always has some type of a counter against it, and the Tombstone just doesn't seem to get the defensive value that other cards do have, like the Electro Wizard, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. Then we also have B tier stats. We have the lowest usage rate was the Expo at a 1.5%. The Expo obviously does a pretty good job because it's a very competitive card if you know how to play it right. We see that a lot in the CCGS, or not a lot, but we do see it. The highest usage rate was the Minion Horde, and right in the middle was 9.5%, which is about where the Night Witch was at. And we also do have the win rates. Lowest in the B tier win rate was the Ice Wizard, a 33.6 win rate. That's incredibly low, but I do think that I think that warrants him going down. And then we have the highest was the Battle Ram at a 55.1%, and then we have it right about the middle was a 48.5%, and that was the Golem. Next, we have the A tier, the very good tier. These are for cards. These are cards that are they're very good for the meta. They may not necessarily be as meta defining as the S tier, but they're good options to use, and especially with some skill, they're good cards. They really are. We have the old tier cards, and now we have some new cards in here. We have the Princess going up from B to the A tier. With the decreased usage in logs, the Princess seems to be doing pretty well. Especially, she just does a really great job at defending a lot of different situations. You used to need her. You used to need to have other log bait type cards in your deck in order to make the Princess work well, because everybody had the log, or is very likely that you had the log. Well, now that the log isn't used a lot, she adds some great utility, and if you don't have the log in your deck, she's really annoying to deal with in a lot of situations. We also do have the Minions. The Minions had an increase in usage rate and win rate, particularly because of the increased usage of bats. I think the A tier is a very good place for the Minions at this moment. Really good damage per second, not quite as much as the bats, but we'll talk about that later. And then we do have the Goblin Gang as well. The Goblin Gang had a very high use rate, and is it seems to be a solid card, even with the Mega Knight, or the Mega Knight, the Mega P.E.K.K.A. Even with the Mega Knight in the meta, the Goblin Gang just seems to do really well. And also it probably helps as well that people are playing Zap more than the Log, and the Zap, although is a positive elixir trait against them, it doesn't completely get rid of those stabby goblins on that offense if you don't have something else to help take care of it. So definitely some good cards here. Now, as far as A tier stats, usage rate, the lowest usage rate was the Three Musketeers, and the highest usage rate was the Goblin Gang at 24.9%. Almost one in 4 decks had the Goblin Gang in there. Right around the middle was 18.4%, which is about where the Elixir Collector was at. Now, as far as win rates, the lowest win rate ranked A tier card was the Fireball at 47.3%, and the highest win rate for A tier cards was the Three Musketeers at 56.8%. Why is this? Well, the Three Musketeers do a great job at countering P.E.K.K.A. decks, and P.E.K.K.A. decks really focus on having that really good solid defense that can take care of anything coming down its lane, but can't defend a second lane. And that's where the Musketeers really shine, is taking out P.E.K.K.A. decks, and that's why they had the highest win rate. So if you can play a Three Musketeer deck, then they're really a solid option for you. Right in the middle was 51.7% for that win rate, and that Ice Spirit is just about right there. Everything else in the A tier was somewhere between those different those ranges, so you can kind of see how good we're looking at for A tier cards. Next we have the S tier. This is the tier that is meta defining. These are the cards that are excellent, they basically shape the meta. They really do. New to the S tier, we have the Mega Knight. The Mega Knight I was hesitant to put into the S tier, but after careful consideration and discussing it a lot with my tier list collaborators, I definitely think the Mega Knight fits into the S tier category. He defines the meta, and he has changed things. He has the second highest win rate out of all of the different cards. I think it's 56 point something percent. Second only to the Ice Golem. And the Ice Golem is probably so high because the Ice Golem does a good job at countering the Mega Knight. The Mega Knight is a meta-defining card. He does a great job at defending a lot of different offensive pushes and even Hog Rider pushes, supported by anything other than air troops, will the Mega Knight take care of. Very strong card, and an excellent option in the current meta when it comes to the competitive tier list, even with so many P.E.K.K.A.s in the meta, interestingly enough. We also have the Miner. Now the Mega Knight, and the P.E.K.K.A. together, as well as the Electro Wizard, honestly, those three cards are doing such a good job at forcing a very offensive meta. If you play defensive cards like the Inferno Tower, hey, we got Bats, we got Electro Wizard, we got Zap, we got Lightning. Inferno Towers are no problem, but what does an Inferno Tower not counter? Miners, right? Those three cards are really forcing offensive gameplay where you're almost always guaranteed some type of tower damage, and the Miner does a great job at doing that. He had an increase usage, or he had increase in stats, and the Miner is one of the most popular cards in CCGS because these competitive players do such a good job at playing defensively, and that's definitely why the Miner definitely deserves this S tier spot. We also have the Bandit. The Bandit does a great job at applying pressure to your opponent, specifically when they are struggling, when they are down on Elixir or they don't have the right card in hand, because there's been less splash cards or swarm cards in the meta because of the Mega Knight. The Bandit actually does a really great job in this meta. She had a high usage rate, high win rate, definitely an excellent choice in the current meta. Lastly, we have the Bats. The Bats are extremely versatile. You can use them on offense, on defense as distraction for DPS. The Bats are a great card to use since they're buff, where they increase the number of Bats from 4 to 5. Definitely a card that you're going to be seeing a lot of in the current meta, and to be paying attention to. You need to make sure that you have 1, 2, or 3 different ways to deal with the Bats. They're not super threatening by themselves, but they have to be dealt with in any other situation where the tower is locked onto something else and the Bats are coming in. You have to deal with them, and also they're really great at defending because of how strong their DPS is for 2 Elixir. Let's go ahead and talk about these S tier stats. The lowest usage rate was the Mega Knight at 18.2%. Still, that's almost 1 in 5 decks having a Mega Knight. You definitely have to consider him being in there, and that's a strong card. We also have Zap, 50.7%, such a high usage rate, and right in the middle was 29.2%, which is about where the Bats were at. So most of these cards, are the cards in the S tier, range from 18% to 50%, and that's just insane. Then we also have win rates. The lowest was the Log at a 50.5%. It should be noted that draws do count in this, so that's a little bit lower than winning every time, or winning every other time with the Log. Still, I think the Log is a good option, so I'm keeping it in the S tier for now, but let me know if you think it needs to be bumped down to the A tier. Highest is the Ice Golem with a 57.3% win rate. The Ice Golem does a great job at countering the Bats, the Mega Knight, the P.E.K.K.A. even. Ice Golem's just amazing in a lot of different situations, and it also adds for an interesting, it adds for a great mini tank if you're going on with a Hog Rider. You know, that tower can attack that Ice Golem, the Hog Rider is able to basically get a free pass to the tower, and that's one way that people actually play around so many P.E.K.K.A.s in the meta, is because the P.E.K.K.A. locks onto the Ice Golem, and then the Hog Rider is able to go around and deal some damage to the tower every time. And right in the middle was 53.7%, which is about where the Miner was. Some very strong cards right here. So all of the S tier cards are somewhere in between there. That's an incredibly high use or high win rate, these are the best of the best cards right now. They definitely are. you'll definitely want to stay tuned in a future episode that I'm going to be doing, where I'm going to talk a little bit about the meta and what has shaped the meta, and some suggested balance changes that I have for fix. It's not a bad meta, but I think that there are some core issues at hand right now that could be paid attention to. But thank you so much for watching this. These are some amazing collaborators that helped me put this all together. If you're interested in collaborating on these tier lists, make sure that you join my Discord server. There's going to be a link in the description below for you to be able to join that and become a part of the Kairos family on Discord. Make sure you leave a comment in the section below telling me what cards you agree with and which cards you disagree with. And as always, guys, you're fantastic. This is Kairos time ticking by, and we will see you in the arena.